The zombie. Quite possibly one of the most recognizable monsters in modern culture. The trend of films for the zombie has stretched far and wide, from action comedy like Zombieland to romantic drama like Warm Bodies. The monster has come far from the hypnotized undead seen in the black and white films like I Walk with the Zombie or White Zombie. But even so, the film in question that has had the most to say about the state of our culture isn't even the one that popularized the modern ghoul. I'm talking about Dawn of the Dead, the 1978 classic by George A. Romero, which set the standard for these films to come. Though Night of the Living Dead was the film that started the formula of having a small group of survivors hunker down in a secluded location while fending off the undead, with a social message at the end, it was this film that took it to another level. By examining the themes of humanity, isolation, and the de-evolution of mankind in Dawn of the Dead, we can see how it had more to say about the state of society in the 20th century than any zombie film to come before or after. And to start with, quoting Roger Ebert's 4-star review of the movie, nobody ever said art had to be in good taste. Now I know what you're thinking. Wait a second, that is an endlessly redone analysis of the movie. Yeah, well, it actually isn't, because people giving into mass consumerism isn't the only theme at work here. From the get-go, we see people in panic. As the undead surge has swept the nation, people have no idea how to handle it. And the characters we follow are perhaps the ones most caught up in the chaos, particularly Peter and Roger. SWAT members seeing the dehumanization of mankind firsthand, their fellow men going in to clear out an apartment complex filled with gang members only to use as an excuse to kill the innocent. It's the definition of barbarism. It was happening during the civil rights movement towards African Americans, and it is clear we can see it happen today when people are faced with a tense situation. People being shot with rubber bullets when they themselves don't have weapons can be used as an example nowadays. Or even the clear panic of someone just sneezing could send people into a frenzy just years ago because of COVID. Same principle for the movie. Just because there was a threat of a gang being held up in the apartment complex was not an excuse for the others to be gunned down. One of the reasons we care for the main characters is because of the humanity they're still latching onto. Roger gets sick from the chaos he sees around him, and Peter would rather get out than stick around. And oddly enough, as the film goes on with the humans doing worse and worse things, the last of our main characters still have that humanity. Peter still finds value in another day, even when faced with the deaths of most of his friends. And same with Fran, who has to try and live a better tomorrow for his soon-to-be child. An interesting side note with Roger is how he begins to degenerate like the bikers later on in the film. Think about it. He enjoys killing and messing around with the zombies, begins to not really take the danger of being bit as serious, and forgets the important jobs he needs to do right before being bit. Peter surprisingly keeps a level head throughout the story, never letting anything get too out of hand, which is in his favor. But these characters kind of go through different levels of dehumanization throughout the movie. Roger being the most extreme of the survivors, and Flyboy being the next. He takes almost the same path, but that's later on in the film, and it's after he gets greedy of the quote-unquote ownership of the mall, after the bikers take over and eventually them losing control. The unfortunate part that comes with zombie films in general is that it takes only one minor mistake to ruin everything, like Roger forgetting the bag in the other truck, or Flyboy deciding to open fire on the bikers when they could have stayed quiet and not been found. Because, side note, they may have been never found if they just stayed put, which directly goes into my next point, isolation. Something that isn't talked about nearly enough with this film is that isolation creates a huge decline in the spirits within the characters. When Roger dies, there's a huge shift in energy. The remaining survivors see how empty the mall is. Seeing dead zombies is actually kind of sad, and we're left wondering what the remaining living will do. And it's not even like we're questioning the actions of the characters, since we all by this point know how it is to basically be locked up and not being able to go outside. We're supposed to feel the pain of the characters, and it is meant to disgust us. Like they are turning into zombies themselves. These things are not without purpose. In a condescending 1979 review by Janet Maslin for the New York Times, she talks about how Some people hate musicals, and some dislike westerns, and I have a pet peeve about flesh-eating zombies who never stop snacking. Accordingly, I was able to sit through only the first 15 minutes of Dawn of the Dead. Well, Janet, if you sat through the rest of the movie, you may be able to see the point of it. I really just threw shade at some person from over 40 years ago. Anyways, we see they're all sad, and it's basically giving us a chance to see them slowly become kind of zombies themselves, finding no purpose but to shuffle around and to eat to survive. Not until the bikers show up and we see Flyboy get violent again. Kind of how people go a little crazy after being stuck inside for a while. The point I'm trying to make is we see how these people are devolving and becoming almost zombies themselves without even being bit, reinforcing how the two are mere reflections of themselves. A little side tangent I want to go on is about the 1985 film Return of the Living Dead. Though the message for this film isn't as clear-cut, we can take away the message of the zombies being sort of reflections of us. In Dawn of the Dead, the zombies reflect our consumer tendencies, constantly shambling in our own isolation for stimulation, whereas in this film, they crave brains. Though we don't crave brains ourselves, but hear me out. When the half-corpse talks about taking the pain away from eating it,
I can feel myself rot.
Kind of shows how the zombies are drug addicts. Events like the crack epidemic and the surge of cocaine use in the 80s is kind of seen in this movie. Even the zombies aren't the shambling stiff Romero zombies, but are running around and screaming in pain. And that is something that is especially prevalent in this era of zombie films. We see almost an image of what we as humans might devolve into with the zombies. Whereas shows like The Walking Dead creates the drama of humans being savages and all that without really giving us a relationship with the undead monsters. Like here.
Now, George Romero brings us the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all times, Dawn of the Dead.
Another purposefully done aspect of the movie is the violence too. Something Ebert talked about in his review. But seeing the zombies ripping apart the bikers is showing the dangers of us putting aside our problems until it eventually catches up with us. By that point in the movie, the zombies honestly take a back seat and are kind of made a joke. Getting pied in the face and straight up robbed. But as their numbers grew and they closed in, we see the result. Kind of like another situation that became way worse than it should have when we didn't take it seriously. Seeing the survivors at odds with the bikers who decide to just go in and take them off for themselves without working together with some of the last people who haven't turned into zombies can be related to an article by Agustin Fuentes titled The Roots of Human Aggression, where he states, "Cooperation and conflict are not opposites, and neither are aggression and peace. We can get a lot farther in our quest to understand being human if we discard these dualisms. Like war, these characters are put into situations where they need to cooperate when at the same time having to commit extreme acts of aggression, and like us, the zombies do the same." These factors at play really allow this film to shine. Themes on the human condition really paint a picture for us on how we can become complete shadows of our former selves. Though it may be turning into a flesh-eating monster and shambling around all stiff and turning blue, it is important having a movie that holds a mirror to us, showing the dark parts of ourselves. And though this subgenre of horror film can get very bold with its style, Dawn of the Dead hits all of the right beats of being a good film in general. Not horror film or zombie film, a good movie. And one of the most important things is showing the bad sides of who we are as humans, standing above all the others in its era.